Nothing is moving. At least not in the ways you can see. The prayers are real. The faith is real. The calling is real. But the evidence that anything is actually happening seems impossibly thin right now. This message is for that exact moment. And what you are about to hear will change how you hold the silence. Something is happening in your life right now that you cannot see, not because it does not exist, but because it is being built in a dimension that your physical eyes do not yet have access to. A silent construction, methodical, of an absolute precision, moving according to a schedule that is not yours, and according to methods that exceed your current understanding. And while this construction continues in the invisible, while foundations are being laid, connections are being established, doors are being prepared, people are being positioned, you look at the surface of your life and you see what appears to be stillness, waiting, emptiness, the apparent absence of any response to prayers you have been carrying for a long time. This is one of the most difficult experiences that the spiritual life can produce, not the obvious suffering that at least has the clarity of its own pain, but this particular waiting, this period between the promise received and its visible manifestation, where you know that something has been said, but you cannot yet see what is being done. Where you have been given a direction, but the doors that direction implies remain closed. Where you have been formed and prepared and refined through difficult seasons, and now you wait for something to begin corresponding to what you have been prepared for. And in this waiting, in this silence between the promise and the manifestation, the most dangerous temptation of all begins to form. Not the temptation to do something bad, but the temptation to conclude that nothing is happening, that the construction has been abandoned, that the promise was perhaps an illusion, that the silence of the invisible means the emptiness of the invisible. Chosen. I am speaking directly to you who are watching this video at this precise moment in your life. This message exists to dismantle that conclusion before it settles too deeply. Because the silence of God is never the emptiness of God. And the absence of visible manifestation is never the absence of divine activity. God is building what he has not yet revealed. And what he is building in the silence of your waiting is of a value and a precision that premature revelation would have compromised. Let me describe with precision what this period of waiting between the promise and the manifestation does to a person from the inside. The first thing it does is create a painful gap between what you know and what you see. You know, with a certainty that comes from a place deeper than mere thought, that something has been spoken over your life. An interior conviction, a calling felt, a promise received in prayer, or through scripture, or through the voice of someone trustworthy who spoke over your life with a precision that could not have been random. You know what you have received, but what you see, the surface of your daily life, the current circumstances, the state of your relationships and opportunities and doors, does not seem to correspond to what you know. And this gap between the interior knowing and the visible reality is exhausting in a particular way, because it places you in an uncomfortable position where you must choose continuously, often several times a day, between trusting what you know and believing what you see, and trusting what you know when what you see constantly contradicts it, is a spiritual work of an intensity that few people recognize for what it truly is. There is also something that this period of waiting does to your relationship with time. Before you received the promise, before something specific was spoken over your life, time passed in a relatively neutral way. It moved forward. The seasons succeeded each other. Life progressed at its ordinary pace, without you having any particular reason to count the days or measure the gap between where you are and where you should be. But after receiving the promise, after something precise was spoken over your destiny, time changes character. It begins to weigh in a way it did not weigh before. Every day that passes without visible manifestation becomes one more measure of the gap between the promise and the reality. The months accumulate, the years sometimes, and the gap between what was said and what is visible does not narrow. It sometimes seems to widen, and in that apparent widening, something subtle and destructive can begin to happen in your faith. Chosen. There is a final dimension of this wound I want to name honestly. It is the silent shame that this waiting can produce. Because in many spiritual communities there exists an implicit pressure, never fully articulated, but always present, to quickly manifest what you have received, to demonstrate the faithfulness of God through the speed and visibility of results. And someone who has received a clear promise, but who is still waiting for its visible manifestation, can begin to feel a silent shame, as if the waiting were proof of insufficient faith. As if the delay were the sign of a personal deficiency, as if others who seem to manifest more quickly had access to something they have not yet found. That shame, carried privately, rarely expressed, rests on a fundamental lie about how God works. And it deserves to be named directly, because it is one of the heaviest unnecessary burdens that waiting can impose on a sincere person. Here is the truth that heaven wants to place in the deepest layer of your understanding today. The silence of God is never his inactivity. It is his construction. This distinction between silence as inactivity and silence as construction is the difference between an abandonment and a preparation, between a God who has forgotten and a God who is working in dimensions that your senses cannot yet perceive. Noah. And I want you to consider his story from the angle of waiting rather than from the angle of miracle. Received an instruction from God that corresponded to no visible reality of his time. Build a boat, not a small boat, a massive vessel in a place far from water, for a catastrophe that had never existed before in the history of humanity. In Genesis 6 verse 22, it is written simply, Noah did all that God commanded him, for years. Some biblical estimators speak of decades. Noah built what no one else could see coming, what no one around him understood, what he was mocked and rejected for. And during all that time of silent and apparently senseless construction, God was also building in the invisible, preparing what premature revelation would have made impossible. Here is the first truth I want to anchor in your understanding. What God builds in the silence cannot be rushed without being compromised. There is a reason why revelation follows construction rather than preceding it. A reason why God does not always show you what he is doing while he is doing it. Premature revelation, seeing and understanding too early what is being built, creates several problems. It creates a dependence on understanding that replaces faith. It creates a temptation to involve yourself in the construction in a way that interferes with divine precision. It creates premature exposure to forces that would have wanted to stop the construction if they had seen it too early. Watchman Nee wrote that God takes such care in the preparation of his servants precisely because what he wants to build through them is of too great a value to be rushed. The slowness of God is never negligence, it is precision. It is the sign that what is being built deserves the time it takes. Here is the second truth. The waiting is not passive. It is participatory. One of the most common errors in understanding divine waiting is to conceive of it as a period of inactivity, a dead time between two active seasons. But waiting in the biblical sense is not the absence of activity, it is a specific form of activity. In Psalm 27 verse 14, David writes, "Wait for the Lord, be strong and let your heart take courage." Wait for the Lord. The Hebrew word translated as wait, kavah, does not simply mean to wait passively. It means to twist together, like threads that are twisted to form a stronger rope. The waiting is a twisting together, a progressive strengthening, an active process through which your faith, your character, and your capacity to carry what is coming are reinforced precisely in the duration of the waiting. What you become while you wait is as important as what you receive at the end of the waiting. Sometimes more important, because what you receive must be carried, and the capacity to carry it is developed in the waiting itself. Here is the third truth, and this is the one that transforms everything. What God reveals will always be proportional to what he has built. The revelation never arrives before the construction is sufficiently advanced to support it. The manifestation never arrives before the person who must carry it is sufficiently formed to hold it. And the precision with which God synchronizes the revelation with the construction, the exact moment when he opens what was closed, when he reveals what was hidden, when he manifests what was in preparation, is one of the most convincing proofs of his simultaneous intelligence and love. In Habakkuk 2 verse 3, God says to the prophet, who is waiting for his vision, "For still the vision awaits its appointed time, it hastens to the end, and it will not lie. If it seems slow, wait for it. It will surely come. It will not delay." This word, spoken to a man who was waiting and not yet seeing, is one of the most precise and permanent in all of Scripture about the nature of divine waiting. The vision has an appointed time. It hastens. It is not late. It is precisely on God's schedule, and if it seems delayed according to your human calendar, wait for it will surely come. T.D. Jakes often says that God will never give you something you are not yet able to manage. Not because he wants to limit you, but because he wants you to still be there when the blessing arrives, not crushed by it. The silent construction is how he ensures that you will still be standing, still anchored, still capable of receiving and carrying what is coming. When the moment of revelation finally arrives, chosen, my question for you today is this: what is the promise you have been carrying so long that you have begun to doubt whether it was real? And what would change in the way you are living this waiting if you could genuinely believe that God is actively building in the silence? Let that question find the places in you where the waiting has been heaviest, because those are the places where the divine construction is most advanced. Let me show you with precision what someone looks like who has learned to inhabit divine waiting with faith and intention, who has stopped reading the silence of God as his absence and has begun to receive it as his construction. The first transformation is in their relationship with time. Before this shift, for someone who is waiting for the manifestation of a received promise, time is the enemy. Every day that passes without visible manifestation is one more day in the deficit between the promise and the reality. Time is heavy, it counts, it accuses, it seems to work against the promise rather than with it. After this shift, after having understood that waiting is active construction and not passive pause, the relationship with time transforms fundamentally. Time is no longer the enemy. It is the medium in which the construction occurs. Every day that passes is not one more day in the deficit. It is one more day in the construction, one more day where foundations are laid in the invisible, one more day where you are being formed for what is coming, one more day where connections you cannot yet see are being established. One more day where doors that will open at the exact moment are being prepared in the invisible. This transformation in the relationship with time produces something remarkable, a peace that does not depend on visible progress to be maintained. A stability in the waiting that often puzzles people around you who do not understand how you can be at peace when nothing seems to be moving. And that peace, that inexplicable stability in the waiting, is itself a testimony. A testimony of the reality of a God who is working in dimensions that physical eyes cannot yet perceive. The second transformation is in their capacity to act in faith before the manifestation, because someone who has understood that God builds in the silence, that divine activity always precedes visible manifestation, begins to develop a capacity to act in accordance with the promise before the promise is visible, not in a reckless or presumptuous way, but with the wisdom of someone who understands that faith is always oriented toward what is not yet seen. This capacity, to act as if what God has spoken was already in the process of becoming real, even when the circumstances do not yet confirm it, is one of the most powerful and rarest forms of faith that exists. And it can only develop in people who have inhabited the waiting long enough to learn to trust the invisible construction rather than the visible reality. The third transformation is in the depth of their knowledge of the faithfulness of God. Before the waiting, before having personally traversed a prolonged period between the promise and the manifestation, the knowledge of the faithfulness of God is often primarily theological. You know God is faithful because Scripture says so. You may have seen evidence of his faithfulness in relatively minor areas of your life, but your knowledge of his faithfulness in prolonged waiting, in the silence that lasts, in the delay that extends beyond what you could have anticipated, that knowledge cannot be acquired theologically, it must be lived. And someone who has come out the other side of a long period of waiting, who has seen God reveal what he was building after a season of silent construction, carries a knowledge of divine faithfulness that is of a solidity and permanence that nothing else can produce. That knowledge does not waver when the news is bad. It does not tremble when circumstances seem to contradict the promise, because it rests not on the continuity of a certain experience, but on the proven reality of a God who has already demonstrated in your own history that he builds what he says and reveals what he builds at the exact moment when the revelation can be received and carried. The fourth transformation, the one that makes all the others possible, is in their capacity to encourage others in their waiting. But because someone who has personally traversed a long period of divine waiting and has seen God reveal what he was building, has access to a type of encouragement that no one else can offer. Not the theoretical encouragement of someone quoting verses about the faithfulness of God from the comfort of a season of manifestation, but the incarnate encouragement of someone who has been in the waiting, who knows its specific texture, its particular weight, the way it tests every layer of what you believe, and who can say from inside that experience that God builds in the silence, that he is faithful in the invisible, that the revelation comes, always, at the exact moment when it can be received, chosen. I want to leave you with this. What God is building in your life right now, in the silence of your waiting, in the invisibility of your current season, in the space between the promise you carry and its manifestation you have not yet seen, is real. More real than what your physical eyes can perceive, more advanced than what the visible circumstances suggest, more precise and more intentional than anything you could build yourself if you had access to all the available tools and resources. You have not been forgotten, your promise has not been abandoned. The silence is not the emptiness, it is the construction. And the construction continues. Methodically, precisely, according to a schedule that takes into account not only what must be manifested, but what you must become to be able to carry it, manage it, and be its faithful steward when the revelation arrives. Stay faithful in the silence. Continue doing what you know to do with what you have now. Continue cultivating the faith that does not depend on visible confirmation to be maintained. Continue letting yourself be formed by the process of waiting rather than resisting that process in the impatience of wanting to see the manifestation, because what God reveals will always be proportional to what he has built. And what he is building in your silence will be, when the moment of revelation arrives, larger, more precise and more perfectly adapted to who you have become in the waiting than anything you could have imagined at the beginning of this season. The revelation is coming, it is hastening toward its appointed time. It is not late, it is on God's schedule. And that moment, precise, perfect, exactly synchronized with what has been built and with who you have become, is closer than you think. What breaks you open is what lets the light in.